So once again, hello everybody. It's Monday, it's the Deer Park, it's the Buddha Center. It's a beautiful day. You've all done well, maybe not. So let's start like we normally do, short period of bell meditation. Please, wherever you are behind your avatar, get into a nice meditation posture. And as I ring the ching bell, the idea, focus on the sound of the get that deep listening going. Absorb some Dharma. You're going to get distracted, happens to everybody. When it does, just gently remind yourself and go back to focusing on the sound of the bell. So short meditation, do the 3 recitations, and then on with the talk. Give you a moment, get into a nice meditation posture, and we'll begin at the sound of the bell. I go for refuge to the Buddha, the teacher. I go for refuge to the Dhamma, the teaching. I go for refuge to the Sangha, the taught. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dhamma. I take refuge in the Sangha. I have taken refuge in the Buddha. I have taken refuge in the Dhamma. I have taken refuge in the Sangha. 3 pure precepts. Cease to do harm. Do only good. Do good for others. Bodhisattva vow. However innumerable all beings are, I vow to lead them all. However inexhaustible my delusions are, I vow to extinguish them all. However immeasurable the Dharma teachings are, I vow to master them all. However endless the Buddha's way is, I vow to follow it completely. Swaha. All right. Well, today the subject is meat. Actually, it's on Buddhist diet. What do we eat? So there's an aspect of what Westerners understand of Buddhism that is likely to deter them from pursuing its philosophy and its practice. It's this one like sticking point. the belief that they must abstain from the eating of meat in order to practice Buddhism. This is a belief that a lot of people hold. It is a fundamental misunderstanding that causes many people to walk away from the noble path. The question then is, can a person be a Buddhist and not be a vegetarian? Be an omnivore? This is a subject that evokes emotions. Be mindful. Engage your open heart and your open mind. You do not have to agree, but allow yourself to at least learn. Engage your practice. So that's like the warning before the movie comes on the screen, okay? So we're going to start out a Nikayan Buddhist. For a Nikayan Buddhist, and this is one who looks at the earliest written down discourses of the Buddha and goes by those when they look at what the Buddha's intent was. It is clear that the Buddha allowed the eating of meat by his disciples. Now let's make clear what disciple means here, though. A disciple at this point in the early discourses is what we now would call a monk or a monastic or a mendicant. Now, there are strict stipulations about eating meat, but the intent is clear. And these are found in the Javaka Sutta, and this is part of the Mahima Nikayas. Javaka was a disciple of the Buddha. And, you know, as we all should, we have questions, right, for our teacher. So he goes up to the Buddha and he asks about the consumption of meat. Basically, can I or can't I? Should I or shouldn't I? Well, the Buddha's reply was that meat would be unsustainable or unsuitable for eating by a monastic if the intent was that the animal was slain specifically to feed that monk. Like if you invited a monk over for dinner and you said, oh, by the way, we're going to kill one of our chickens for you. The monk couldn't eat. If the living animal had been mistreated or mishandled, think about factory farms today as a really good example. If the intent was the animal was slain specifically to feed that monk, so the monk can't choose their own animal, and the monk can't let anybody else choose the animal for them either. If the living thing was frightened, and then lastly, if knowing any of these things to be true, the disciple consumed it anyway, then there would be negative consequences. So again, if a living animal had been chosen by the disciple, think about you go into a seafood place, a restaurant, and there's a big tank full of lobsters. Can't go up and go, I'll take that one with the really red claws. Again, if the animal has been mistreated or mishandled, again, factory farms. If the intent was the animal was specifically slain to feed that monk, like I said earlier, and then if the living thing was frightened, right, had a tense, stressful life. And then again, knowing any of these things, if you eat it anyway, well, that's wrong. So Zen Master D.T. Suzuki, in his commentary on the Lankavatara Sutta, and this is a really important Mahayana sutra, he states, and we're talking about D.T. Suzuki here, this is a man who knows his business. He said that the chapter dealing with eating meat was added in later version of the sutta, and was likely not the authentic words of the Buddha. There is ample evidence in the Pali Nikayas that show that this total rejection of meat as part of the diet was not part of early Buddhist philosophy. So again, this is D.T. Suzuki. He's one of the leaders in Zen for his time and place. Now, you may be familiar with the Urban Dharma website. If not, I highly recommend checking it out. Reverend Kusala is an excellent speaker, gives really great Dharma talks, and there's lots of them recorded. But they also have articles by other folks on their website. The website is urbandharma.org, all one word together. And there was an article on there about what the Buddha said about eating meat. And you may be familiar with the individual that wrote this. His name is Ajahn Brahm. and I'm sure many of you are familiar with that name. He's a British Theravada monk, and he offered his insight into this subject. And these are some excerpts from it. Since the very beginning of Buddhism, over 2,500 years ago, Buddhist monks and nuns have depended on alms food. That's where they go door to door to get food. They were, and still are, prohibited from growing their own food, storing their own provisions, or cooking their own meals. Instead, every morning they would make their day's meal out of whatever was freely given to them by lay support. Whether it was rich food or coarse food, delicious or awful tasting, it was to be accepted with gratitude and eaten regarding it as medicine. The Buddha laid down several rules forbidding monks from asking for the food that they liked. As a result, they would receive just the sort of meals that ordinary people ate. And that was often meat. However, there are some meats which are specifically prohibited for monks to eat. Human meat, for obvious reasons. Meat from elephants and horses, as these were then considered royal animals. Dog meat, as this was considered by ordinary people to just be disgusting. And meat from snakes, lions, tigers, panthers, bears, and hyenas. Because one who had just eaten the flesh of such dangerous jungle animals was thought to give forth such a smell as to draw forth revenge from those same species. The Vinaya, then, is quite clear on this matter. Monks and nuns may eat meat. Even the Buddha ate meat. Unfortunately, meat eating is often seen by Westerners as an indulgence on the part of the monk. Nothing could be further from the truth. I was a strict vegetarian for years before I became a monk. Unquote. So that's from Ajahn Brahm. But here's the deal. I can give you all these things, and not trying to change your mind or tell you how to think, just offering you different ways to think, if you will. But I recommend that you go to urbandharma.org, read the entire article, learn from it, and then search out other insights on the web, or go to your local library, or speak to a monk maybe that has a temple in your neighborhood, in your city. Go out and find out. So, to be a Buddhist, one doesn't have to be a vegetarian. The question then arises, why are so many Buddhists vegetarian, or at least they claim to be? And there is a very good reason, an excellent reason, as a matter of fact. Some followers of the Mahayana tradition cite, among others, the Brahmajala Sutra or the Brahma's Net Sutra as a Buddhist text that calls for the abstention of eating meat of any kind. This text was written in the 5th century of the current era by an unknown author. Later it was translated into Chinese by Kumarajiva, and it is considered apocryphal, which means it's not accepted as part of the canon by some, while the majority of Mahayana scholars and monastics hold to the opposite belief, that its words were spoken by the Buddha. This writing offers that abstention from eating meat is part of the broader intent of the first of the Bodhisattva precepts, not to kill or encourage others to kill. The idea is that by consuming meat, one is requiring others to kill. In the Mahayana version of the Mahaparinirvana Sutta, the Buddha is quoted in a final teaching before his death, quote, "The eating of meat extinguishes the seed of great kindness. That compassion falls away if one eats meat." And later Mahayana texts, like I mentioned before, the Lankavatara Sutta, strongly favor a vegetarian diet. Now, this likely arose through cultural changes. As Buddhist monks begin to gather in fixed location, their monasteries, and monks no longer performed as many alms rounds, that before that, the Buddha instructed all monks to wander around, visit towns, visit villages, and accept the alms they were given. And they did this because, they taught and they wanted to be an example to others. But once the monastics started spending the majority of their time in monasteries, and the local lay people became responsible for supporting them, this meant that any meats were most likely killed and butchered by the lay people specifically for that monastic community. This is one of the 5 instances to be avoided in the consumption of meat that we talked about in the Javaka Sutta. So this precipitated a spiritual need to choose a vegetarian diet. There's reasons, right? There's reasons for choosing one, reasons for choosing the other. The most common reason that a Western Buddhist will give for not eating meat is it strengthens their compassion and loving kindness. And there is no doubt it can do just that. Absolutely. That the eating of meat does encourage industries that treat animals in cruel ways and kill millions of animals is undeniable. And that abstention eases some small part of that suffering cannot be denied. Abstention from eating meat or even reducing meat consumption should be done as part of a practice, right? I am reducing my consumption of meat as I travel the path and build my loving kindness and my compassion into a stronger and stronger thing. But we don't do it as a way to signal our virtue. Look at me, I'm a vegetarian and you're not. You're bad because you're not a vegetarian, or you're doing something wrong because you're choosing to eat meat. It is a choice. That's what it is. It's a choice. There's a place called the Buddha Gate Monastery. They have a really nice website too. It's buddhagate.org, and they offer a very eloquent view. Quote, "There are many expedient means to help us attain purity of body, speech, and mind. Expedient means can be thought of as a bridge or a pathway. Whether at work or in spiritual cultivation, it will not be easy to succeed without using expedient means. In cultivation, a first expedient means is to practice vegetarianism. The spirit of Buddhism is compassion and equality. If we wish to attain a mind of compassion and equality, first, we should not kill. Second, we should save and protect lives. Third, we should practice vegetarianism. If we can accomplish all these, our compassionate mind will manifest. A compassionate mind is the Buddha's mind. Therefore, even though practicing vegetarianism seems ordinary, its significance is profound and far-reaching." Unquote. Eloquently, powerfully put. All truth there. But it is a fact, though, that many Mahayanists around the world do not follow a vegetarian diet. It's just a fact. So again, I want you to not take my word for this, these different examples I'm giving you, or take my word as far as you can, but go out on the web, your local library, and look it up. Don't take what somebody's already planted in your body-mind as the truth, but go out and find out for yourself. Not to change your mind from one to the other, but to understand why others make choices. You have reasons for your choices, people have reasons for their choices. In our own time and culture, there are Buddhists and those of other worldviews who are just smug vegetarians, who negatively judge others for eating meat. And in the view of both traditional and contemporary Buddhist thought, a monk or a layperson who claims some sort of spiritual superiority because they are a vegetarian is considered to have an immature practice. This is one where the ego seems to still be kind of prevalent. But let me also say that a Buddhist monk or layperson who flaunts that they eat meat and claims some sort of spiritual superiority over that, they're just as wrong. Because it's just a choice. In the frequently asked questions of the Access to Insight.org website, in answer to the question, do Buddhists have to be vegetarian? The answer is that the choice of whether or not to eat meat is a personal choice in Theravada Buddhism. though many who choose to follow the middle path may eventually decline to eat meat out of compassion for animals. Vegetarianism is a choice, not a commandment. So look, you may have noticed this is a complicated issue. And it doesn't matter if you're Buddhist or not, by the way, this is a complicated issue. Buddhist philosophy doesn't demand that one be a vegetarian, but it does offer us ways to make that decision on our own. Whether we choose herbivore, carnivore, or omnivore, we must remain mindful of our interconnection with everything around us. And as part of our daily practice, we must develop mindfulness of those connections. And what we eat can be an opportunity to practice. Before each meal, take a moment and respect the journey that what you are about to eat took to get to you. So you'll notice my little visual aid here. My teacher's teacher, Rugen Fisher Sensei, he did kind of a mealtime prayer that he would say, and it was good and everything, but I kind of changed it. So that's what we have up here. In my kitchen above the cabinets on one whole wall, Mary made this beautiful wall hanging that has this on it, so every time we go into the kitchen, we stop and read it. And this is our before dinner prayer, if you will, our Dharma. And it goes like this. I honor all living beings who gave their lives and all living beings whose efforts brought this food before me. May the strength and vitality acquired by eating this meal be used for the benefit of all living beings. Swaha. So in the end, it isn't the diet that makes or unmakes a Buddhist. It's how we practice.